لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف وجعلنا من أعوانه وأنصاره. Alhamdulillah, we've been able to study some of the key concepts in the Qur'an which refer to positive, sympathetic relations between human beings. So far, we have mentioned few and only 3 are remaining. One is sahib. In a paper that I have written about friendship in the Quran, I have tried to survey and investigate different occurrences of the term sahib or its plural, which is ashab. It seems that this term and its cognates essentially refers to something. I'm saying something, it doesn't need necessarily to be a person that accompanies something else. It can be a human being, it can be an animal, it can be a place, or it can be a time. For example, in the Quran we have kasahib al-hut. We don't use, for example, wali or akh or khalil that we had before for a fish. But sahib can be used even for a fish. Or for example, it can be used for a person who is used to, for example, a particular place. We can say this person is sahibul masjid. Not in the sense of owner. It means that he's a person who is very much spending his time in masjid. Raghib Iswahani, in his Al-Mufradat fi Gharib al-Quran, defines the term sahib in this way. He says, as-sahib al-mulazim, the one who is a kind of companion, the one who spends time in relation with insanan, another human being, kana or haywanan, or animal, or makanan, or zamanan. For example, we can say this person is sahibul jumu'ah, a person who goes every Friday to Friday prayer, or for example does certain things in that day. We can say sahibul jumu'ah. So it can be a place, it can be animal, it can be a human being. ولا فرق بين أن تكون مصاحبته بالبدن. This can be physical relation. وهو الأصل والأكثر. أو بالعناية والهمة. Sometimes, for example, we say this person is sahibul fiqh or sahibul falsafa. It doesn't mean that there is a physical, encounter. It means that this person is very much preoccupied with that discipline, very much thinking about it, involved in it. So, this is the meaning of sahib. So this is why I have written in this way. It essentially refers to something that accompanies something else, whether it be a human being or an animal or a place or a time. Therefore, this is more general than friendship, because friendship can only be between a human being and another intelligent being. A human being, for example, an angel, they can become friends, but must be intelligent. Both sides must be intelligent. And this just requires being together for a considerable period of time. So if you are, for example, going to Mashhad, and on your way to Mashhad, someone is sitting next to you for a few hours, you can consider him as your sahib. Or, for example, those people who stayed in prison with Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, Ya Sahiba Yasaj. Or when Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to the cave when he was migrating to Medina, as yaqulu li sahibihi, the one who was in the cave with Rasulullah is considered as sahib. So it doesn't mean that this person has been for many years with Rasulullah, or for example, many years with Prophet Yusuf in prison. It can be used for a person who has been there for a long time or a short time, but that time must be considerable, not just 1 minute, 2 minutes. If I meet someone on the street and we speak for a few minutes, we don't use the term sahib. But if we are going to Tehran and sit next to each other in a bus, we can say, this is my sahib in my trip to Tehran, my companion. So, in the Qur'an, we have several cases that this has been used. And what is important, even it doesn't need always to have positive or sympathetic relation. This is very important. When we use the term brother or friend or khalil, there must be a harmony. But in the Quran we find that, for example, the pagans of Mecca are introduced as sahib for Rasulullah, or Rasulullah is as sahib for them. For example, وَمَا صَاحِبُكُمْ بِمَجْنُونَ. This is not only for the believers. This, in the first place, is an address to those who didn't believe. So, for using the term sahib, you don't need agreement in ideas and beliefs. You remember the discussion we had about brother, about wali, all types of relation that we had before. This is different. So this is why I say that in what follows we will refer to some of the cases in which this term is used in the Quran to refer to the relationship between two people. As we will see, it is more general than friendship, and it is used more to refer to acquaintance and being together. You can be together with a good friend, you can be together with someone that you fundamentally disagree with him on certain issues. This is why even Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is introduced to the pagans who had rejected Islam as their sahib, since they had lived with him in Mecca and knew him very well. So they were acquainted with him, and that's enough to call it sahib. So there are several verses of the Quran about sahib or ashab. For example, I mentioned only few of them. In chapter 7, verse 184, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, have they not reflected that there is no madness in their companion? وَمَا صَاحِبُكُمْ بِمَجْنُونَ. And that he is just a manifest warner. So their companion. Whose companion? The companion of the people who have no faith. Chapter 9, number 40. If you do not help him, then God has already helped him when the faithless expelled him as one of two, when the two of them were in the cave. As his, as يقول لصاحبه لا تحزن. He said to his companion, do not grieve. لا تحزن, do not grieve. إن الله معنا, God is indeed with us. Chapter 12, number 39. This is Surah Yusuf, about Prophet Yusuf. O my prison companions, or some translators have said, my prison mates, like classmate, prison mate, my prison mates. Are different masters better, or God the one, the all paramount? Also, chapter 70, verses 11 to 14, chapter 80, verses 34 to 37. So there are different cases, and when you read the interpretations and translations of the Quran, especially in English, you find that they don't use always one equivalent for sahib. Sometimes they use companion, sometimes they use mate, they use different things. But sometimes even they use espouse. For example, for chapter 70, verses 11 to 14, they have used espouse for sahib. But the concept is what I said. Someone who has been acquainted with something else, either another person or a place or a time, or even, for example, an animal like a fish, for example. This is called sahib. Another term is sadiq. Sadiq is also used in the Quran, and the plural form is astaqa. It comes from the root sidq. And the reason a friend is called sadiq is because this is used for a friend whose truthfulness is proved to you. A truthful friend. A friend who is honest in his friendship. Because there are people who say, we are your friend, but you are not sure whether they are really your friend or they just pretend to be friends. So, sadiq comes from the root sidq, which means truth. Sadiq is used to refer to a friend who is honest and sincere. Ibn Manzur in Lisanul Arab explains this in a very beautiful way. And he says, As-sadaqa wal-musadaqa al-mukhalla, to be like Khalil, as we explained before. And then he says, it is used for someone who has been truthful in wanting good for you. Sadaqahun nasiha. Nasiha means to wish good for someone. So he is honest and sincere in wanting good for you. And then he says, Annahu sadaqahul mawaddah wan nasiha. So in his friendship, in his wishing good, he is honest. The Quran uses this term in several verses, and I mention here one verse and give you reference to another verse. There are two verses that I have found, and in both cases it's used in singular form. One verse is chapter 26, and it's starting with verse 100 up to verse 120, but it's in the middle. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, now we have no intercessors, nor do we have any sadiq, which some people have translated sympathetic friend. We don't have any shafi, and we don't have any sadiq. So we don't have any intercessor, and we do not have any sympathetic friend. Had there been another term for us, we would be among the faithful. The other verse, if you want to refer yourself, is chapter 26, 101. So sadiq is used in singular form in the Quran, but outside Quran it can be used in plural form as astaqa, and is used for a friend who is honest, whose sincerity is proved for you, you can trust him. Another term is hamim. Hamim is sometimes used in the Quran as an adjective, like waliyun hamim. And sometimes it is used independently, without having any noun preceding it. It's used as a noun. So, let me first start with some cases that Hamim is used in the Quran as an adjective. Chapter 26, verses 99 up to 101. And no one led us astray except the guilty. Now we have no intercessors, nor do we have any sympathetic friend or any intimate friend. So they have translated Hamim as intimate or sympathetic. So it's an adjective. So a friend who is very close to you, it's called Hamim. But I have another idea that inshallah I will mention later. First I say what other people have said. So Hamim, when it is used for Sadiq, is someone who is very friendly with you, or very close to you, very intimate relation is between you and him. Another case is chapter 41, verse 34. لا تستوي الحسنة ولا السيئة. Good and bad are not equal. فادفع بالحسنة السيئة. Repel evil with what is good. Okay, what happens if you do so? فإذا الذي بينك وبينه عداوة كأنه ولي حميم. If you do good to someone who has done bad to you, then you would see that the person who is your enemy becomes your very close friend, very sympathetic, intimate friend. Waliyun Hamim. So here, Hamim is translated, even in Farsi translations of the Quran, they translate it like this: close, sympathetic. Of course, they use it Farsi words, but they translate it in this way. Then there are cases that Hamim is used not as an adjective, just alone. For example, chapter 40, verse 18. Chapter 69, verses 35 to 37. Chapter 70, verses 10 to 14. I read some of it. Warn them of the imminent day when hearts will be at the throats. It's so difficult that the hearts become so close to your mouth as if it's next to your throats. Choking with suppressed agony, and the wrongdoers will have no friend, nor any intercessor who might be heard. So here Hamim is used separately. There is no Hamim for them, there is no friend for them. Of course, I will mention later what is my understanding. Chapter 69, verses 35 to 37. So he has no friend here today, nor any food. He has no friend here today. So Hamim means friend. Chapter 70, verse 10. And no friend will inquire about the welfare of friend. La yas'alu hamimun hamima. They don't ask about each other, because they are so busy with their own things that they don't have any time to think about other people. Okay, this is the way that in Farsi translations, English translations, they have defined the term Hamim. But when we go to the further, sources or main sources of Arabic, we find that Hamim is more than a friend who is intimate or close to you. It seems that Hamim should be used for a relative, not just a friend. I mentioned what scholars have said, the experts like Ibn Manzur and Raghib have said, and then I leave the judgment to you. But this doesn't mean you can make every judgment that you like. Okay. So, Ibn Manzur in Lisan al-Arab, volume 13, page 153, he says, Al-Hamim Al-Qarib alladhi tawadduhu wa yawadduka. Al-Qarib, a kin, a relative that has love and friendship for you, and you have love and friendship for him. So it's more than a friend. It must be a person who has a kind of like blood relation with you. It's very close to you. And then he says, it's related to Hamma. Al-Hamma khasatul rajul min ahlihi wa wuldihi wa dhi qirabati. You know this hadith from Rasulullah, even Ibn Manzur in Lisan al-Arab mentions this. Allahumma ha'ula'i ahlu bayti wa hammati adhhib anhum al-rijs wa tahhirhum tathira. Rasulullah, referring to Ahlul Bayt, said, these are my Hamma. Hamma and Hamim are similar. Who is your Hamma? Those relatives of you that you are very concerned about them. You care about them. This is Hamma. If something bad happens to them, you feel very much, painful, very sorry. You would have great sadness for them. So, hammatuhu ay aqriba'uhu. Al-Hamim al-Qarabah. Then he quotes from Farra. You know, Farra is very famous in Arabic, books like Al-Mughni and other books. They always quote from Farra. He says, La yas'alu hamimun hamima, means La yas'alu dhu qarabah an qarabatihi. So he's not just a friend. Hamim must be a relative. Raghib Iswahani also, he says, قوله عز وجل فما لنا من شافعين ولا صديق حميم, or لا يسأل حميم حميما, he says فهو الغريب المشفق. So it must be a relative, but not, for example, I don't know, cousin of your, for example, cousin and then cousin of him, no, someone who is your relative and you have great concern for him. Al-Qarib al-Mushfiq. He loves you, he cares for you, you care for him. And then he says, غِيرَ لِخَاصَّةِ الرَّجُلِ حَامَّتِهِ. When someone is very close to you, your brother, your sister, your father, your maybe uncle, and very close relatives, it's called Hamim and Hamma. So I think what we find in normal text in Farsi and English, that they translate Hamim as friend, and when it is used as adjective, they say intimate friend, is not enough. It must be a kin, a relative who is close, that you have concern or great concern for that relative. So this is why I have written here that studying Arabic lexicons and dictionaries leads one to the conclusion that the literal meaning of Hamim is a close relative, not just a friend, or kin for whom one really cares and is concerned about. When it is used as an adjective, again it is said to mean the same. So in the quotations that we had, whether it is adjective or whether it is used as a noun, it's the same. Okay, so Alhamdulillah, what we have managed to cover so far is the following terms and concepts. Sahib, which we said it means a person that has spent considerable time with another person or an object like an animal or time or space. Then Khalil, we had I think 2 sessions on Khalil, especially because we wanted to explain what does it mean that Prophet Ibrahim was adopted as Khalil, and it means a very close, intimate friend. We talked about Sadiq, we talked about Akh or brother and Ikhwah, brothers. We talked about Hamim, and we talked about Wali. So these are different types of friendship. In addition to this, we had also 1 session on Zawj, a spouse or mate, because that is also a human relation or something that in human beings become very important. Although Qur'an says everything is created in pairs, but when it comes to human beings, it has much more depths, the relation between wife and husband. So these are different types of relation that can exist between 2 human beings, which is normally positive. It shows harmony, it shows good relation. Inshallah, next week we will start talking about negative relations. We already have talked about enmity when we were talking about wilaya, but inshallah we will focus more on this side and what the Qur'an says about enmity between the people. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to understand the Qur'an better, inshallah, and to apply the teachings of the Qur'an to our personal and inshallah social life. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alameen.